The following episode contains graphic language which some listeners may find disturbing. It is intended for mature audiences only. Listener discretion is advised.
In today's episode, we are featuring the most strongest and empowered woman we've come across. After having overcome a trauma of sexual assault and brainwashing, her journey has been a roller coaster of emotions and tribulations. This episode themes around her acceptance of her past, her painful growth into adulthood, and her continuous journey with healing and forgiveness. Her story has touched a global audience. She's a published author of a memoir, A Girl's Faith, an inspiring speaker featured in TEDx and several other podcasts, and recently founded her new company, Hukam Healing. Karina Calver, welcome.
I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Before we get into the story, can you tell us what your childhood was like growing up with your family?
Even though I was raised by my parents, I always felt way more closer to my grandparents. And I think because of just who they were as people. My mom and dad, in another way, they were simple people. My mom came from Indonesia, being the only woman or the only child, female rather. And so her exposure to life was very different, or rather quite limited. I didn't feel like she had a whole lot to offer me in that sense, and it wasn't her fault. It was just how her life was. Whereas my grandmother was a perfectionist. So she expected a lot from me, which of course back then was like, oh my God, let me breathe already. And in hindsight, I appreciated that because I knew that I could push myself. And it was set in a positive light because she could demonstrate that herself. She meant a lot to me because she taught me things that back then I didn't respect or realize the importance of it. But in hindsight, my values, knowing how to pray, knowing the certain chants, all the little things that seemed nothing back then were actually paramount in me building faith. So she kind of stood for the inner qualities that I hope I have because of her. And so in that way, she was my rock. Papa was more like the softie. And yet, it's not like he wasn't loving or he couldn't be firm. But he was that balance. He was that yin and yang when I saw them. Because to me, they were the ultimate couple. And I love the fact that he let her be the strong woman. And he never felt intimidated by it, And yet he was still loving and very generous and giving to others. And I found that to be so beautiful to look at, just to watch him be that kind of person. And he had so much faith at the same time. And he also had great work ethic. So there was a lot of things about who he was that I'm in awe by. So to me, they were the ideal parents. I always felt in my heart of hearts that my grandparents stood more of a parent kind of role because of the principles they had and they carried with themselves.
The way that you viewed your grandparents' relationship, did you use as a benchmark for what relationships should be about?
Definitely. I think I had this ideal image. And it's not like they were super romantic. It's not really being displayed to that extent. But I still felt like they had that balance. And I'm sure they were in a lot of ways imperfect. But I love the fact that despite that, they knew how to balance each other out. And so for me, that was really good. And it was a huge contrast to my parents. But seeing the contrast was really healthy as well, because it showed me the real world that I lived in, or the real world we all live in.
Sounds like your relationship with your family was quite unique. So could you tell us a little bit about your childhood, a little bit about your story?
As a child, I was raped. It happened when I was 5 and went on for over a decade and a half. So I was completely oblivious to what was going on, the severity of what I would be dealing with later on in terms of the wounds and the scars and the brainwashing or manipulation. It all became more obvious and clear to me in my 30s. I was so wired into thinking that this was done as a form of education or love, because this is how you're supposed to be when you're older, is to be a woman who knows how to take care of her man sexually. And if you've been told to believe that that is the right way forward, why would you question any other way?
As you were going through these experiences, did you ever feel a deep sense of fear?
This is going to sound really crazy. When you're brainwashed, you don't know right from wrong. So when you don't know right from wrong, you don't even know what's happening is wrong, that you should fear it.
Right.
Therefore, you almost welcome it. And that was what I had to let go of, meaning I was mad at myself for enjoying it. How could I enjoy something as toxic as that?
Yeah.
But I was so young and I was so badly wired. If you're being already wired into something and then you're constantly being stimulated,
Right.
the effect is a lot greater. So why would you even question?
Right.
And then if this is someone you trust with all your heart, with all your life.
That must be so hard to stomach. I mean, your father is supposed to be the most trusted figure in your life. It must be so difficult to fathom even something like this could happen to you. So at what point did you realize that something wrong was happening then?
I remember two incidents vividly. One was talking to my high school teacher about it. And her reaction was enough for me to realize, because her reaction scared me. She was like, come and live with me and this and that. And I knew that what was going on was definitely not okay. And that was when I was year 10 or year 11 in high school. The other incident was when I was a little older, so 21. And I was dating. And my boyfriend that time, when I started telling him, he went livid on me. He was so angry. He couldn't understand why I still cared. And I hadn't processed it to understand the severity of what had happened. So their reactions were sort of an indicator of what was going on was a lot more intense and a lot more serious than I was giving it credit.
So when did you realize the actual severity of the situation?
I only told my teacher that I was molested. I didn't even know I was raped because the level of brainwashing was so intense. I didn't even know. And when I did know, I was doing a coaching certification course, and she so happens to also be a counselor. We're just talking about sex and my reservations about it. So she's like, hey, you know what? Why don't you come and just see me for a session? I'm sure it might just be my upbringing, being from a traditional family. And that's when it all unraveled. It was just bang right there. And I didn't know how to digest it. And because for me, it was different. It was for an extended period of time. And it happened during childhood. So it's very different. But if people go through it one-off, not that it's not important or not traumatic, don't get me wrong, you know that you're raped. And when you know, and I'm not saying it's harder or it's easier. I'm just saying that you have this awareness of what happened. You're going to doubt and you're going to second guess and you're going to say to yourself, maybe I asked for this. Maybe I did something to allow this to happen, and that you shouldn't do.
Given the situation with your dad, it must have been so difficult for your mom to grasp. I'd like to know, how did your mom react to these situations?
Every child, especially every daughter, you naturally are drawn to your father, right? He's your first love, your first man. And I think that was kind of unconsciously what I was doing. And so my mom, being who she is and who she was in that time, she didn't really have a role, because I think One, she was removing herself from all of it, whether it's from her own patterns, meaning her own life story and her own personal issues, whatever it may be, to not dealing with the matter because most people don't like confrontation, don't like to deal with the truth. Who wants to look at the fact that their own person that they're married to could do something as horrific as that?
So when you first started going through the process or this journey of recovery and forgiveness, how much of your mom was a part of that?
I mean, initially, I was furious. I felt abandoned and neglected from the get-go because every mother's role technically should be to protect and honor and nurture a child. And I didn't feel that was carried out. And that was the immediate response to my personal situation.
Right.
But I also learned later on that that's never the intention. I hold no grudge against her because it takes a certain kind of strength to be able to stomach that. And it's not easy.
Yeah, that's hard for me to wrap my head around. It must take such maturity to find that strength and process that. So I'd like to know, what does forgiveness mean to you?
That's a good one. I actually just did a TED Talk about it. It means the world to me because it is very easy to sit with anger. It's very easy to let resentment and grudge be the cornerstone of how you live your life because someone had done you wrong. And I had chosen to do it otherwise. And it doesn't mean that I had never been angry. You know, I'm a rape survivor. So it almost becomes logical and it's rational that I'd be angry and be angry for the rest of my life, if you will. But it doesn't serve me though. If I chose to be angry forever, I'm not living my best version. And one of the things I talk about in A Girl's Faith, and I talk about all the time, is I always want to grow and be better.
Right.
And I cannot do that if I'm sitting with anger or with pain or with sadness or grudge. And so forgiveness is really just allowing me to let go of what has done, you know, who had wronged me so I can move forward. And it's making peace with that. And one of the biggest things about forgiveness is understanding that we're all imperfect.
How long did it take you to realize or to come to terms with this forgiveness?
A long time. I went through therapy after realizing I was raped, which was very much later in my years, in my almost late 30s. So I'm 46 now. So when I realized I was raped, it was hell for me. It was anger and rage, and I was so pissed at the world, you know, and of course at him. We're talking about my father here. And that took time for me to sort of come to terms with the fact that this has happened. Initially, it was acknowledgement that this has happened. And then it came to, I got to accept that I can't undo the past. This is my reality. And I always thought, oh, I'm a virgin. I'm going to stay a virgin until I'm married. I felt the need to live up to that, being raised from a very traditional Indian family. And that was all taken away from me. And I didn't even know. Just getting my head around all of that took a good 6 months of intense therapy. I came across a Buddhist monk's poster. And I'm like, I want to see what this guy has to say. So after a while, I spoke to him and he taught me love and kindness meditation. Once I felt the compassion, it wasn't intellectualizing anymore. Then I knew that I was good to go. And that's when everything changed.
For our listeners who don't know what loving kindness meditation is, can you explain it to them?
So it basically is when you are meditating, you're thinking about the person that you want to forgive. For me, it was my father. And the whole idea is you're thinking about this person and you're sending love. Initially, you could have days where you have more love, and certain days you're like, what? You must be kidding me. No way. It walks you through certain values on how to build compassion, how to let go and have kindness, to see that person as a human being, to understand that the person has also done some good. And it makes you come into realization of how to give love and have compassion. It's done religiously for a period of time, so you can start developing that kind of heart space.
Yeah, wow. I mean, like, that's a really admirable way to process something like this. It takes some real strength to be able to look at it in that way. I really like it. So what was it then for you? Did you actually have to practice it physically for some time before internalizing it? Or did you sort of right off the bat know that this meditation was going to work for you?
I've always been meditating since a young age. I wasn't unfamiliar with love and kindness. But when the monk told me, hey, you know, you should do this, this is going to help you. I have nothing to lose. I'll give it a shot. But I wasn't doing it because I wanted the outcome as much as I'm going to trust the process. When it comes to these things, because it's intangible, you don't know when the change occurs. And so you just have to keep doing it. There was no one eureka moment where I felt like, oh my God, I don't hate him no more. And I think it just kind of happened where people talked about him and I felt nothing. I was truly fine on the inside. And that's when I realized I'm okay. I'm free.
Yeah, that love and kindness meditation really makes me think about that cliche, putting yourself in others' shoes so you can help yourself understand them more. Did you have to put yourself in your father's shoes to help you process this?
I did not need to put myself in his shoes. I literally had to understand that we all are imperfect. And if I can understand that we're all imperfect, then why am I holding him at a different yardstick, if you will? And not understand that he too is imperfect, just like I am. Maybe in a different scale of imperfection. And I believe in karma and I believe in reincarnation. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's just how it is for him. I'm in this journey with him. He gave me life. So there's something for me to learn. And maybe that is it. To really build that heart space. To really have so much love for even those who can do me such intense hurt. When I say compassion or love, it's like carrying no pain within me. It's not about him, but it's about me. If I want to evolve, if I want to be my best version, this is holding me back.
During that recovery process, we've covered a lot about that spiritual recovery, that mental recovery, a lot of the internalizing and the evolving and growing from there. What about on the physical front? Did you have to learn how to trust in relationships again? Were there things that you had to unlearn and relearn during that recovery process?
Yeah, definitely. I had to learn about me all over again in a different way. I wasn't consciously doing it on some areas. I think as I was feeling stronger within myself, I was flowing better. So I was more in tune. So I felt more confident to say no. I felt more confident to understand my body. And I felt more confident in what I needed, whether it's on a sexual area, whether I wanted to go out on a girl's night, anything. And I was very much aware, and I wanted that to be really important to me. And it was, and it still is.
Your story is a powerful one because of the journey to recovery that you've had. For listeners who are going through these experiences, what advice would you give them?
It's a process. Nothing comes overnight. A lot of people don't see what happened before I've come out and sort of shared my story. So there's been years of work that goes unnoticed, if you will. And I think the first thing is definitely get help. Don't blame yourself for what's gone wrong, especially if you're a victim. You got to give yourself love, a lot of love. Be your best friend, be your biggest cheerleader, and be so kind to yourself. And be proud that you're getting the help you need, that you're brave enough to ask for that help. And that's really difficult. Because half the time we sort of intellectualize it and we say, maybe I did this. Maybe I asked for this to happen. So we start blaming ourselves for the action that happened that's beyond our control. That what someone inflicted on us. Have so much love for yourself that you seek help. Because if you are a victim, it is not your fault.
So, Karina, you have been quite a central part of the Hong Kong Me Too movement. And you are also a teacher where you're working really closely with young children. Have you ever worked along the fields or within the field of child protection and child rights?
No, I haven't. I've had in the past children, not specifically girls, coming up to me, telling me about their stories or their little incidents. But have I worked in that space? No, because I rather work with mothers. I want mothers to be more equipped so that they can be the go-to to teach about body safety to their kids. That's something I'm more geared towards. I think as women or as mothers, if we're skilled, then half the problem is solved. And it doesn't mean that if you're older that you don't need to know these things. It's just that's not my target audience at the moment.
So I'd like to wrap up this interview with one final question. Connecting back to the process of recovery, Could you tell our listeners, what is closure to you? And did you ever seek closure with your father?
I don't believe in closure.
Yep.
Because it's I think it's such a myth. The reason I don't believe in it is because we're always waiting for that moment. And I think then you don't live life if you're always waiting. So that's why I don't believe in closure in that sense. I believe that when you live and when you are fully connected and you have let go of whatever it is that needs to be gone. For me, when I was ready to have that conversation, that's when it happened. And I never planned it. I knew at the back of my head, I was going to see my father at some point. But of course, we were blessed with COVID. So all of that kind of idea changed. But then as I was working on my TED Talk preparation and all of it, and I really just felt at my best space, despite feeling also a bit lost in terms of not being able to travel. I thought, you know what? What am I waiting for? I mean, yeah, ideally, I'd like to see him and then sort of physically patch up so he knows for real. But what if I don't get that opportunity? What if I'm gone tomorrow or he's gone tomorrow? Because you don't know about life. That's when I texted him. And I said, hey, I'd like to call you. And I said, don't worry, I'm not going to bite your head off, because I did back then. And we spoke, and it was one of the most connected, real conversations I've had with him in my life. I felt, and he actually said to me, you've changed and you're such a strong, powerful woman. He could not believe this is the woman I am. Like I'm, technically his daughter. He was crying profusely and asked for forgiveness countless times. And I'm like, Dad, I've forgiven you like ages ago. I just never reached out. But now I felt the need to, so I did. I've let that go. And I'm not saying you're my father, because God, no. You didn't do what a dad would do, the basic things. But at the same time, I'm letting that go. And I'm just keeping a human-to-human relationship. And that's kind of what it is for me.
At the end of the interview, Karina guided us through a loving kindness meditation. This could be a step towards your journey of forgiveness. Try this with us.
If you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. But if you want to leave them open, that's fine too. Now, as you have your eyes shut, I want you to take a deep breath in and slowly exhale. Feel your body getting relaxed. And as you come to that relaxation, I want you to picture a scene of a person and how he or she may have done something that was not so pleasant. That left you feeling hurt, betrayed, or even disappointed. Remember that feeling and what that was like. In your heart space, observe how that felt. Now I want you to picture the same person who's done something so amazing for you, that you felt so loved, you felt really special, and your heart just warmed up. And as you're surrounded in this amazing sensation, take it all in. Breathe into it. Let it penetrate your entire being at this very moment. Replay that scene as you carry yourself through this experience. Now I want you to take a deep breath in and slowly exhale. Then do it one more time. A deep breath in and slowly exhale. I want you to now remember that you're in a safe space. You're here with me as we walk through this meditative exercise. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. The reason this is important is because that same person who gave you an amazing, positive, heart-filling experience has also once hurt you, but that's the same person. It also shows that we're flawed, whether it's that person or ourselves. We're flawed, we're not perfect. And when you can step back and understand that we're all flawed, even that very person that hurt you, it's also that very person who has once done something beautiful for you. And that's when you're going to have compassion. You will understand from your heart space that we're not perfect. And it's not always our intention to do wrong, but because of our imperfection that we sometimes do wrong. The intention is you don't call or see that person because you want closure, or you want them to say they're sorry, or you want something from them. That's not why you do this. And that never should be the reason to patch any relationship up. It should be because you want to feel the forgiveness that you want to have for yourself, so you can live that free, liberated life. And so it's important to come back here and go, can I forgive? Because I too make mistakes. And that's why a love and kindness meditation helps you to understand that I need to send love because I too am flawed. And that just allows you to exercise this feeling of giving love. Because as you give, you feel it first. And you have more compassion for the people that have done you wrong.
If you'd like to read her memoir, A Girl's Faith, listen to her TEDx talk, The Power of Forgiveness, or learn more about Hukam Healing, you can find all the links in the description provided.
I'd like to recognize our guests who were vulnerable and courageous enough to share their life experiences with the rest of the world. We really appreciate your perspective. Thank you for showing us that we're human. We'd also like to give a special thanks to our producer, videographer, sound engineer, and everything else in between, Joe Mills. The show would be nothing without you.
If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow or subscribe. Also, we would love to hear from you. Give us feedback by rating and reviewing on any of our different platforms listed in the description. This is Joseph.
This is Jenica, and we are Multispective.